I'm Fiona Morris, 30 years old. I'm standing in my apartment kitchen with my parents on their knees begging forgiveness for stealing thousands of dollars from my crowdfunding campaign. I have one hand on my cane, the other on a thick binder. Two kitchen chairs are pulled close to the table. Dana, the hospital social worker, sits in one. My phone won't stop buzzing, messages from the crowdfunding site, an email from a state office, and a note from my insurer. These are all replies to the one email I sent last night. A certified letter lies between two water glasses. The paper smells faintly of antiseptic wipes and coffee I didn't finish. Mom whispers they'll fix it. Dad says it was a misunderstanding. I slide a glossy cruise confirmation across the wood and point at the past due invoice from my physical therapist. The campaign is frozen, I say. Donors are being told. The rest goes to a medical fund in my name only. They stare. This exact moment matters. Before I tell you everything that led here and how I made my own parents beg for mercy, tell me where you're listening from. I see your comments. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications for more family revenge stories. 2 weeks after the car crash, my alarm still wakes me the way a lighthouse wakes ships, insistent and useful. It chimes for my medication window and I flinch up from sleep to the ache in my right hip. I keep a blue-tabbed spiral notebook on the nightstand. Every morning it has times, dosages, pain scores, and little stars for physical therapy days. I write like I'm arguing with the body, what hurts, when, and how I moved through it. My cane clicks against the hardwood when I hobble to the kitchen. The counter has a neat grid of pill bottles and an ice pack that sweats onto a towel. I take my pills, circle the time, and put tiny checks beside the ones I actually swallow. That morning, an email popped up on our shared family account, Bon Voyage. Your luxury cruise is confirmed. I stood there with a vitamin in my mouth and the coffee tasting wrong. The charge date matched withdrawals from the crowdfunding deposit account. At the same hour, Hannah, my physical therapist, sent me a message. Balance past due, sessions suspended unless paid. She was gentle, but the message hit like a hand on glass. My next step in recovery just evaporated because someone bought a balcony cabin. The cane's click felt louder that day, like a metronome counting down what I might lose if I didn't act. I circled the date in my notebook twice and underlined therapy until the ink bled. The spiral notebook, the cane, and the two chairs on my table became things I leaned on, not just physically but as tools. They were proof I could measure hurt and also proof I could plan. Mom and Dad have always been a character sketch read aloud in other people's kitchens, warm, charming, and just a little unreliable. We're all one team, they'd say, smiling, while Mom used my card points to book her sister's flights and Dad skimmed a tax refund just until next Friday. I translated that slipperiness into quirky stories and forgiving sighs. They were late to my graduations but loud and convincing at every family gathering. They were people who could charm a pastor into forgiving them at a pancake breakfast and forget to pay their dentist. Boundaries with them usually got framed as being difficult. "Why are you being dramatic? We're family," Dad would say if I asked for receipts. After the crash, their voices ramped up the sympathy. They hugged me longer, promised rides, and asked for temporary access to our shared family email to help coordinate meals and updates. I gave it to them because what else do you do when your hip is raw and the world seems smaller? I let them have logins just to check the updates, and I told myself I was smart. Paper trails were paper trails. My sister Grace gave me a look, one shoulder up, eyes flat. "You know how they are," she mouthed. I told myself this time would be different. I wanted that to be true. Then one day a campaign appeared online, "Help Fiona Recover." It had my hospital photo, a short story written in Mom's voice about how I needed home care, rides to therapy, and someone to cover a few bills until I could work again. The page asked for a monitored plan for home recovery, an extra bed and aid, therapy sessions, and strangers started clicking donate. People I hadn't seen in a decade sent messages, "We're thinking of you," with money attached. Old classmates, neighbors, people who'd also sat in emergency rooms and knew what it cost to rebuild a life chipped in. I didn't create the page, but I let it run. I told myself the money mattered more than the fact I hadn't posted it myself. I added a goal list to my spiral notebook: hire aid, pay PT, safe door lock, and trusted mom and dad to handle details. 10 days later, the total read $150,000. I breathed out in a long, stupid way because suddenly there was a number big enough to hire the help I needed. I circled hire an aid and pay PT in pink and felt a little relief settle into my bones. Then the cruise confirmation landed in the same family inbox, side by side on my screen. The donation tally and a glossy itinerary for 7 nights aboard the Ocean Sapphire with cabin numbers and a grand total. Beneath it, Hannah's invoice sat unpaid in my inbox, marked past due. My coffee turned to something acidic in my mouth. The campaign that was supposed to be about my recovery looked like a ticket to an island for the people who said they were taking care of me. It felt ridiculous and sharp at once, like the world was making a joke at my expense. My goals were painfully simple: stand straighter, walk farther, sleep through a night without that sharp hip pain. To do that, I needed continuous therapy, reliable rides, and someone who could help with the small household things that take energy: laundry, groceries, a steady schedule for exercises. Missing a single block of therapy isn't just a delay, it's a place where scar tissue begins to harden and a walk you once had leaves. The obstacle wasn't abstract. It was the fact that people who promised to steward a public fund took money meant for my medical care and spent it on a cruise. Hannah called and said she'd hold my spot for 3 days. I counted the days in my head like beads. If my therapy stops, my progress stalls, and that straight back I was working for could become a limp I learned to live around. I drew a line down the page in my notebook. Left column needs with bullet points: therapy, aid, rides, medical equipment. Right column what donors were promised with matching items. Then I wrote under what they took: luxury travel, cabin, drinks. The mismatch almost laughed at me. I called Mom. She laughed bright and too loud. "We needed a break," she said. "We'll pay the therapist when the bank clears." Dad said I was being dramatic and ungrateful. They kept calling it timing, a misunderstanding, a simple mix-up. I wrote every word down in the notebook, neat and exact. Facts are armor. I could feel the old shame letting them in, giving them keys to my inbox, settle heavy in my chest. But under the shame there was a familiar kind of steel. I'd survived a crash, I could survive this truth too. I drew a heavy box around one sentence and underlined it twice. Root every remaining campaign dollar into a medical fund in my name only. That line stopped the shame from pulling me back. It became a plan. I write one sentence in my blue-tabbed spiral notebook like it's an order to myself. Root every remaining campaign dollar into a monitored medical fund in my name only. I underline it 3 times and star it. I scribble the exact words I'll say if they try to charm their way back in. Donors paid for my care, not your cruise. I write it until the pen dents the paper. Then I text Dana, the hospital social worker, and try to keep my fingers steady. "Can you come to my apartment tomorrow afternoon? I need a witness for a serious conversation about care and funds." I hit send and hold my breath. A minute later, "Yes, I'll be there. Bring the timeline." Relief slides into my chest like warm tea. I call the building manager and ask for a note on my file: "Do not release spare keys to Carol or Leonard Morris." The manager grunts but says okay. Tiny controls, big relief. I change my shared family passwords that night and write the new ones in my notebook. I open a new bank account in my name only and set up alerts for any movement over $10. I place a fraud alert with the credit bureaus on the easy, clunky website and print the confirmation. I email an attorney, Ryan Porter, with a concise packet and ask if he'll take the case. He replies he will on contingency, no upfront fee, and I sign the paperwork online. I print it and tuck the copy in the binder. The plan is papered and precise. 1 email to the platform, the state consumer office, the insurer's investigations unit, and my hospital social worker. Attachments with every proof and a clear request: freeze the campaign, notify donors, route remaining funds to a medical account in my name only, then cut off their access. I sleep on the couch that night with the binder on my chest like a small, heavy animal that promises safety. The next morning I call Mom and put the phone on speaker while I sit so I don't jar my hip. "The therapist hasn't been paid," I say. "Where did the money go?" My voice is steadier than I feel. Mom goes, "Syrup sweet, we needed a break, Fiona, we're tired, we'll pay the therapist when the bank clears." Dad chimes in from the background, "You're being dramatic." I ask for specifics. "The campaign login, bank receipts, the remaining balance." Silence. "Then, we handled it, sweetheart." My pen scratches the page as I write their replies verbatim. "We handled it" becomes a line in my notebook that looks small and guilty next to the tally of dates and amounts. "Donors didn't pay for a getaway," I say slowly. "Pull up the account with me right now." Mom's voice tightens. "You're not in the headspace to be looking at this." I mark the time on my phone and write it down. Facts first, shame later. I repeat the request. "I need verifiable proof today." They hang up. The phone clicks dead. The room feels colder. My pain ticks up 2 notches from sitting too long. I ice the hip until the towel turns dark with sweat. I mark the time again and circle it. The first clash is logged. I call Grace, my sister, because old habits make you look for an ally. She answers but leaves long pauses between words like they're weighed. "Did you know about the cruise?" I ask. Her breath sounds small. "They said they'd earned it," she says finally. "I told them it was risky." "Did you know they used donor money?" I ask. She exhales. "Fiona, I don't want to be in the middle." That sentence lands like a stone. I imagine her balancing a family reputation on one knee and choosing it. I try to explain about Hannah, about the unpaid invoice, about how donors were promised therapy and a safe home. Grace says, "Please don't make it public, we don't need more drama." I hear the word drama and draw a small black square around it in the notebook. I feel the bridge to her start to char. Maybe she'll come back around. Maybe she won't. I say I love her and I'm going to fix it. She asks me to promise she won't be dragged into it, and I promise I'll keep her out as much as I can. I close the call and write "Do it alone" in big letters, then underline it. Isolation tightens, but so does clarity. I open the crowdfunding page and use the report misuse link. The form has the personality of a small, indifferent machine, checkboxes and a polite "thank you." I use the chat feature first because it feels immediate. The bot returns a list of help articles about running a campaign responsibly. I paste a calm, clipped message: "Medical funds diverted to personal travel. Therapist unpaid, please freeze." It asks for attachments. I attach screenshots: the campaign header with the goal, donor comments, the cruise confirmation with dates and price, and Hannah's past due notice. I also attach my discharge papers and a PDF of the therapist's invoice with her phone number. An automated reply thanks me and says the report will be reviewed in several business days. I feel my chest tighten. I push harder and find the support email and write the same thing in a longer version with dates, times, and exact amounts. Still, the answer comes back slow and corporate. "We need confirmation of control over the care plan." I work through lunch formatting documents for upload. Every click is a small revolt. A human finally replies after a string of messages and asks for proof I control my own care plan. They want Hannah's contact and the hospital discharge paper. I forward both and attach a 1-page timeline I made, which lines up donation spikes, withdrawal dates, the cruise purchase, and Hannah's suspension notice. The person writes back, "We've escalated this to trust and safety." The name Karen appears in the header. I write Karen's name in my notebook like I'm meeting a new player in the game. The delays are not just bureaucratic, they're physical taxes. Hannah calls me later that afternoon and her voice is worn. "I can't keep treating you without payment authorization," she says. She's careful, like someone who cares about my progress and her own business. "Every week missed slows your recovery, scar tissue builds, range of motion gets harder." I tilt my head and taste metal. Can you give me one more session? I ask. She sighs. I'll hold your spot for 3 days if someone can authorize payment or a plan. I thank her. She texts an invoice that I screenshot and add to the binder. I cancel the part-time home aide I had planned to hire because I can't guarantee payroll. Sitting feels harder because there's no one to help with laundry and dishes and the small muscle of daily life. I do my floor exercises alone, bracing on my elbows, counting out loud to keep from crying. The towel under the ice pack grows wetter and a dark circle blooms on the wood, an old clock made of sweat. I open my rent app and stare at the due date. If I start covering therapy myself, the money will disappear fast. I touch the spiral notebook and feel the dented pen marks where I circled hire aid. On social media, Mom posts a bright beach photo with a caption. Self-care after a tough season? The comments are hearts and little sun emojis. I screenshot the post and add it to the binder. The image sits on my kitchen counter like proof of a new story they're telling to the world. I text Grace the screenshot. She replies with a heart and please don't post about this. I type I won't yet and mean it. There's a difference between making things public for drama and bringing the truth into daylight for accountability. I choose the second. I end the day circling a question in my notebook: what works when talk doesn't? And the answer feels like a small, certain click: paperwork, witnesses, and the daylight that paperwork brings. The binder is heavier now, and the cane leans against the table like a king's scepter. I sleep with one eye open and the other on my plans. That afternoon, Mom posts a bright photo of a palm tree and a hint of ocean with a caption. Self-care after a tough season? The comments are an avalanche of hearts and you deserve it messages. I screenshot it and add it to the binder. The image sits there like evidence that the story inside my apartment isn't the story they're telling the world. Grace texts a single heart and one sentence: please don't post about this. I type back, I won't yet, and mean it. There's a difference between making a spectacle and making the facts visible in the right places. I put the screenshot under a tab marked public. I go to the kitchen and make a sloppy peanut butter sandwich because cooking feels like planning a trip when my legs don't always agree. The ice pack on my hip has started to drip again, a dark circle spreads on the towel. Small things keep clanging: a missed call from Hannah, a message from a neighbor offering groceries, the faint hum of the building's heater. I rest my hand on the binder and tell myself aloud that paperwork beats promises. That sentence calms me like a simple prayer. I sleep with the binder on my couch and the cane leaning at my shoulder, ready for the next move. A donor messages me privately with a quiet, worried tone. Did you get the items we paid for? I read the message twice before answering. My fingers hover, then I type, I'm working to make sure funds go where donors intended. I'll share receipts. That exchange matters because it's not strangers versus family, it's people who believed in what they were supporting and now want to know their money did what it promised. Another donor forwards a banking confirmation email header showing where some withdrawals landed. I print it and tuck it under money. Each small scrap of proof begins to feel like an ally. Mrs. Patel from across the hall shows up at my door with a bag of soup and a roll of toilet paper like someone carrying armor. Whatever you need, she says, and she means it. Her kindness knits a little warmth back into the apartment. Platform support finally escalates my report to trust and safety. A human signs off the message with the name Karen Blake. I write her name in the notebook and breathe a little easier. I also draft a short factual update to donors, not angry, just clear: what was promised, what I need, and a plan for receipts. I don't send it yet. I want to keep my notes clean and precise, not fuel for a family fight. Progress is small but real. The people who mattered most, the donors, the therapist, the neighbor, are listening. Then Mom posts an update on the campaign page itself. We're handling Fiona's care. Please give us privacy. She attaches a sunset photo that softens any question. The comments split the room. Some people clap with hearts, others ask for receipts and shoutouts to my name. A few tag me. My phone starts buzzing, comment after comment, and my chest tightens. I go to my personal page and close comments set my profile to private. Boundaries feel like small, practical armor. A troll slides into my direct messages with a short cruelty. If you're so hurt, why are you online? I block them and write noise is not data in the margin of my notebook. A former coworker offers a ride to therapy, then asks in the same text, "Is everything okay with the fundraiser?" I tell him I'm fixing it. The public voice is loud enough to drown facts, but it's also a place where witnesses gather. I keep building the case and saving every message. Then Mom posts a hospital photo of me without asking, captioned with a crying emoji, and pray for her continued recovery. The campaign spikes with new donations after that post. I feel something loosening inside me, anger and a kind of stunned disbelief. People are generous, they click and feel helpful. But the money people give because they see pain on a screen is being steered straight into someone else's idea of respite. I message Mom directly, "Take that down, you do not have my consent to post my medical images." Her reply is a soft, "People care about you," which reads to me like an excuse. I screenshot the post, the timestamp, and the new total and add them to a tab labeled consent. It hits me how reliable this pattern is. Drama gets attention, attention gets money, and money gets spent on whatever feels good in the moment if no one's watching. This is wider than my family. It's a whole feedback loop that rewards spectacle over receipts. I circle that idea in the notebook. Daylight beats charm. I make a new note. Pull this into daylight with professionals. The sentence feels like a small flare shot into fog. If people donated to a promise, they deserve proof. If my care was promised, my care needs to be what's paid for. Hannah texts. I can give you one courtesy session next week if you show me a payment plan. Her words are kind and practical. I reply that I'm working on it and screenshot her message. The weakness in my right quad is back. Standing makes my knee quiver where it had been steady last week. I make a note of it in the spiral. Quad wobble 210, stand with support. My insurer sends a form letter about post-accident care with a line highlighted that says they'll review costs. The sentence feels clinical and cold, but it's another reason not to wait. I lay out what happens if I do nothing: missed therapy, more stiffness, higher chance I'll limp for good. Those are simple, ugly facts. I draw a heavy star next to a new, bolder goal: route remaining funds into a monitored medical account in my name only, notify donors. I underline it, then I add a metronome of tiny steps under it. One clear email to the platform and the state office, copies to the insurer and hospital social worker, attach the therapist's invoice, the crew's confirmation, and the withdrawal records. It feels like strategy, like a plan that makes their charm mean less. My pencil rubs the paper raw, the plan sits there, precise and possible. I clap the notebook shut, breathe, and feel the same steady click of the cane in my hand. The stakes are higher, but the path is clearer. I cross-reference the withdrawal dates with Hannah's invoices and see the same hours where cash left the account and her bill remained unpaid. I underline matching dates with a red pen until I almost poke through the page. Then I make a one-page timeline: donation spikes, withdrawal dates, the crew's purchase, the therapist's suspension notice, each item in a straight line like a sentence. I title it "What Happened and When," fold it into the binder, and feel the small relief of a problem that can be read, not just felt. Facts are heavy and useful. They don't beg, they point. After I have the pages sorted, I start locking doors I never meant to. I change passwords on anything tied to me: email, cloud photos, our shared calendar, two-factor on, new codes written in the back of my notebook. I call building management and ask them politely to note my account. Do not release spare keys to Carol or Leonard Morris. The manager grunts but says he'll add the note. I gather every spare key from the dish by my door. Mom has a habit of leaving one there like a lifeline, and drop them into a Ziploc labeled "return." The plastic crinkles as if it understands the weight of memory inside. I stop sharing my calendar with the family email and print a fresh rehab plan to tape inside my cabinet door where only I see it. I text Grace, changing locks tomorrow, not shutting you out. Shutting them out? Her reply comes slower than texts usually do, a single tear emoji. It stings, but not as badly as the idea of granting access again. I don't want to be the person who keeps apologizing for asking for privacy. I want my life back on terms I choose. There's a clock now, louder than before. The cruise departs in 36 hours. If Mom and Dad leave port, getting to them will be impossible. If they go, I want the freeze already in place. Hannah has promised a courtesy session that expires in 3 days if an invoice isn't settled. Rent is due in 8 days, and the math looks mean if I start covering therapy by myself. My body tells me this is not the sort of problem you can let simmer. I set a phone timer for short work sprints, 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off, because physical pain and paperwork don't play well together. If I overdo it, I pay the price with spasms that make everything else fuzz. I write the order of operations on a sticky note and slap it beside my phone like a mission patch. Email first, lockout second, calls third, home meetings scheduled last. I stack the binder, the timeline on top, and test my breathing because the next hours will be practical and unemotional. I practice standing slowly and clicking my cane like punctuation marks I can control. Tick, tick, tick. The list is simple because when stakes are high, simple wins. I type the subject line slowly. Misuse of medical crowdfund, request immediate freeze and donor notice. The words feel precise. I address it to 4 people. Karen Blake at the crowdfunding platform's Trust and Safety team, Marcus Reed at the State Consumer Protection Office, Noel Carter at my insurer's investigations unit, and Dana Brooks at the hospital's social work team. I attach the files I printed, campaign screenshots with donation totals, bank withdrawal notices, the cruise confirmation, Hannah's delinquency notice, my discharge papers, and the timeline page. I keep the body of the email calm because facts don't need fireworks. I write in short sentences. I list dates, amounts, and the exact actions I want. Freeze the campaign, notify donors of potential misuse, and route remaining funds to a monitored medical account in my name only. I state that Hannah's invoice is unpaid and attach her contact details for confirmation. I ask for a quick temporary freeze while these documents are reviewed. I keep the tone plain, no accusations that can't be pinned to a piece of paper, no adjectives like cruel or selfish that lawyers would snip. The goal is clear, stop the flow while the truth is checked. Before I hit send, I breathe, fingers poised over the trackpad. I save a PDF copy and print one for my binder because digital is fine but paper is undeniable when you need to show someone the full stack. I fold a copy and tuck it into an envelope labeled sent and slide it into the binder like a promise. Then I press send. The response is almost instant, at least an automated one, and that feels like an answer from a machine. But a few hours later, Karen at the platform writes back herself. Her email is a mix of caution and a name I record like a new ally. Marcus replies that the state office received the report and will review it. Noel at the insurer acknowledges receipt and asks for any supporting documents. Dana confirms she'll be available to witness. Each reply is small and measured and more useful than 1,000 angry posts. Paper and people with titles matter where charm once did the work. I set up a new bank account in my name only and have the card mailed to the building manager to hold. I set alerts for any movement above $10 because control is a small thing and very effective. I place a fraud alert with the credit bureaus online and print the confirmation numbers and put them in the binder. I email Ryan Porter, the attorney who said he'd work on contingency, attach the timeline, and ask him to draft a demand letter. He replies he'll be on it and sends a retainer agreement I sign electronically and print for my files. I draft a donor update that I won't send unless the platform doesn't act. A calm one-page statement that says exactly what donors were promised and how the money will be used going forward with a promise to post receipts. It's written without heat, simple sentences, and a list of items with projected costs. I also type a boundary document, no keys, no logins, no posting my health without written consent. No speaking on my behalf. I print 2 copies, one for me, one for them, and put a signature line on the bottom so there's no pretend about it later. I text Dana. Can you witness the home conversation when they return from the cruise? Her reply comes with an almost immediate yes, I'll be there with a notepad. The little muscle in my throat relaxes. A witness who understands the clinical stakes is different from a relative who will feel obligated to agree. I tape the printed demand letter and the timeline to the inside cover of the binder and write the platform's contact name in big letters on a sticky note at the top. Karen, the pivot I've made is papered and practical. My world feels smaller but cleaner, fewer open doors, more written lines. I move the Ziploc bag of keys to the center of the table like a visual anchor and set 2 glasses of water beside it. The cane rests against my chair like a promise of steadiness. After all the steps, I sit back and let the room breathe in a different way. The binder is heavier now from the weight of truth laid out in black and white. My hip aches, but the ache has a map to it. It can be navigated. I can't stop the early morning alarm, the physical work of healing, or the fact that some people will always judge without reading the receipts. But I can control the part that's mine, the way money is used for my care and the fact that no one gets keys back unless they earn them. I close my notebook and sleep with the binder against my thigh, the pages warm from where my hands had rested. Tomorrow the clock keeps ticking, but now it's counting the hours toward papered action, not excuses. I made a short list of what actually works with them: attention from strangers, official letters, things that make other people watch. Charm evaporates when an official email lands in an inbox or a state office calls. So I unstarred every item that said talk it out and starred the ones that demanded documentation and daylight. If they wanted to keep running the show, they'd have to do it with receipts on the table. That shift in thinking made everything more practical and less personal. It turned my shame into strategy. I also learned to accept that my leverage would be paper and witnesses, not apologies. I pictured Mom and Dad in front of a room where they couldn't sweet-talk a clerk into a favor, where someone would ask for bank printouts and receipts. The thought steadied me the way ice calmed the burn on my hip. I had spent years softening edges for people who told me we were one team. Now I wanted a team that knew how to read a bank statement. When Ryan emailed back, "You have a case for misuse," something in my chest unclenched. He offered to send a demand letter and take replies on contingency, which meant I wouldn't have to worry about upfront fees. I signed his engagement quickly because commitment matters. When paper moves, people usually either comply or they make themselves known. He told me to keep messages factual and short. "No insults," he wrote. "We get better results with evidence, not rhetoric." That advice fit neatly into what I was already doing, listing dates, not feelings. Signing Ryan's engagement felt like crossing a line. There's no going back to family only after you invite a third party whose job is to speak plainly and demand accountability. I authorized him to send a demand letter to my parents, the platform, and copy the state office. Once he sent it, it would exist outside my family's private versions of events. Their stories would meet somebody else's paper. That was irreversible in the way a slammed door is irreversible, loud and final. There was a personal cost I knew I'd pay for choosing daylight over niceties. I'd been shaping my life around their quirks for decades, making jokes about their forgetfulness, smoothing edges when they overstepped. Now I accepted that those jokes would go quiet. I expected Mom to call me ungrateful, to talk about loyalty and family. I expected Dad to threaten to cut me off in small ways that would sting. I wrote both phrases in the spiral notebook so when he said them I could check the box and breathe through it. I also accepted the social cost. Grace might pick a side to keep peace, she might distance herself. I pictured holiday tables that were different and told myself I could handle quiet. I pictured calls that would be colder. That felt like grief, but manageable grief compared to losing the ability to walk the way I wanted to. I added a line in the notebook: "We can love each other from separate truths." It's a clumsy sentence but useful. It allowed me to keep love if it was offered without trading my safety for it. The physical cost was real too. Doing all this work while my body healed meant fewer naps, more back-to-back calls, and one more ice pack or 10. I scheduled work sprints with the timer on my phone, 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off, because if I pushed too long my hip would seize and the rest of the week would be lost to pain. I wrote the cost line by line: less sleep, more standing, fewer social comforts. I kept the list honest so shock wouldn't surprise me later. I raised the goal in a way that felt ambitious and fair. The old ask was small and immediate. Get Hannah paid so therapy can continue. The new goal was structural: get every remaining donation into a medical account in my name only, require receipts for everything, and notify donors of what was happening. Then ask for repayment of the funds already spent if they'd been misused. I crossed out hope for a family apology and underlined monitored medical fund twice. It wasn't because I wanted to punish mom and dad. It was because I wanted to keep standing upright. I scheduled the home meeting for the day their ship returned, and I wrote exactly what I would read: dates, amounts, what was promised to donors, the cruise confirmation, and the unpaid therapy invoice. I planned to hand them the demand letter and the boundary sheet and to ask them, in calm, plain language, to sign an acknowledgement of receipt. No shouting, no pleading. It was a courtroom without robes, just paper, a witness, and me. When the first pushback arrived, it landed like a slap I could see coming. Mom sent a group text to relatives: "Fiona's not well, ignore anything she posts, we're handling it." The message was short, designed to rally sympathy. Dad left a voicemail that sounded almost gentle but carried a threat: "Stop embarrassing the family or we'll pull the campaign." I listened to it twice and felt a hot line of anger. He threatened to remove the very fund that could help me, as if holding my recovery hostage could rewrite what they'd done. The irony tasted bitter. He could take away funds that he'd redirected at his own leisure. On the campaign page, the title changed: "We're taking a short rest to better serve our daughter." The words were coy and had the air of spin. Donations kept coming in regardless. They'd learned how to use the platform's language to soothe questions while the real business happened in bank accounts. I screenshot every edit and filed them by timestamp. The pattern felt less like a mistake and more like a practiced dance. A cousin messaged me privately: "They say you're making this bigger than it is." Their voice was loyal to the family story. I replied with 3 sentences. "The therapist is unpaid, the cruise is paid, here's the invoice and the withdrawal notice." I attached the same pages I kept in my binder. That reply shut down the cousin's assumptions better than any argument could. Paper is loud in ways words aren't. Those early retaliations confirmed that daylight was working. If they were threatened, it meant they'd been comfortable in the dark. I added a fresh tab to the binder labeled family statements and started printing everything they sent to relatives. It felt strange to collect their words like evidence, but evidence is what moves conversations from opinions to actions. I watched my phone light up with supportive messages and wary ones, and through it all the cane rested against the table like a steadying stake. I knew the battle had just started, but I also knew I'd moved from begging for help to demanding it on terms I could live with. Then the building sent a notice that the water would be shut off for repairs on Thursday, the same day I'd planned the home meeting for when their ship docked. I filled the bathtub and a couple of jugs and taped the notice to the inside of the door. The building super shrugged when I asked if the timing was a coincidence. "Construction's messy," he said. Of course it was. The little things that make a meeting doable: running water, a steady stair lift, a neighbor to grab a taxi, started to wobble. Grace stopped answering my texts with anything more than "read receipts." Her silence felt like a small shoulder pushed away. The couch became my bed the night before the water shut off because the bedroom is hard to get in and out of with the hip. I taped my rehab bands to the wall so I wouldn't misplace them in the rush. Control what you can control, I told myself, because the rest felt slippery. Dana called and said she'd stand by the plan, but she also told me to be careful. Keep the meeting short, get what you need on paper. Her voice was steady. I clung to that steadiness like a rail. Public eyes are noisy and unpredictable, and mine kept finding the campaign page even when I tried to look away. A local community page posted my campaign as a success story with a headline that made my stomach flip. I sent a private message to the page admin with the facts and attached a screenshot of the cruise confirmation and Hannah's invoice. They didn't reply. A stranger commented under the repost, "She should be grateful." I muted the thread and archived the screenshot. The noise felt relentless. People with opinions, people with half the story, people who only saw black and white images of a bed and a smiling hospital photo. But the public also produced witnesses. A donor forwarded a bank email that showed where some funds had gone. A neighbor dropped off soup and said, "If you need rides, text me." The crowd can be cruel, yes, but it can also hold pieces of proof that help. Karen at the platform wrote back and said they were handling my report, and Marcus at the state office sent an email saying they'd look into it. Those were the kind of replies that steady you, like the click of a key turned in a lock, but they didn't move as fast as the clock in my head. Ryan sent me a copy of the demand letter he'd mailed and emailed. The tone was brief and firm. It felt like someone had put a flag into the ground. Still, the noise online kept swirling. A cousin called to ask if I was sure I wanted to escalate things, saying, "Can't you let this be?" I told them I couldn't. They hung up without saying goodbye. Constraints started to tighten in ways that felt small until you added them up. My meds were running low because refills took time and the pharmacy delivery service had a backlog. I scheduled a rideshare to the clinic and the driver canceled twice. Backup options evaporated. My friend who offered to drive had to cancel because of work. Another neighbor had a family emergency. The tracker I'd been watching for their ship's return suddenly showed a change in estimated dock time, and my heart dropped each time it refreshed. The platform's note said reviews take 2 to 5 business days. My body didn't work on business days. It worked in minutes and small losses. I started carrying a water bottle and my cane like ritual items, the way someone carries talismans before a storm. Then Noel from the insurer's investigations unit called. His voice was careful and plain, which I preferred. No drama, just facts. "We've seen claims or entries that suggest your parents may have been logging caregiving hours related to your care," he said. I felt my stomach hollow like a scoop had been taken out. I tried to answer plainly. They were not my paid caregivers. Hannah's invoices are unpaid. I can send them the invoice and the discharge summary. Noel asked me for any agreements, texts, or messages that talked about payment for caregiving hours. I sent him what I had within 10 minutes, discharge papers, the therapist's invoices, and a timeline. He said the insurer would follow up with the platform and the state office. The possibility that my parents had represented themselves as caregivers to an insurer changed the scope. This was bigger than missing therapy or a vacation. It could pull other systems into the picture, and suddenly my private family fight had grown teeth. When Noel said he'd look into it, the air in the room felt different, thicker, like a storm coming. I wrote "bigger than us" in the margin of the timeline and underlined it. The feeling of exposure cut both directions. It could help me by bringing formal scrutiny, or it could tangle me in processes that might be slow. I kept my hands busy by printing the emails and stapling them into the insurer section of the binder. Small, steady acts calmed me when the world felt loud. The last safe option I'd been leaning on disappeared like someone pulling a chair out from under me. My friend who had offered rides texted, "I got COVID. I'm out this week." I typed back a quick "get well" and crossed out backup ride 1 in my planner. Then the building super knocked to say the water shutoff was starting earlier than planned. I ran around like a person packing for a sudden trip, filled jugs, warmed up some soup, stacked paper plates. Grace texted finally, "Don't meet them alone." I replied, "I won't, Dana will be here." "I'm doing it anyway." Her rhythm of replies had changed over the past week, and I felt the ache of that like an old bruise. I had to tighten everything else. Door closed, white noise app on my phone, recorder backed up with an extra battery. I locked my bedroom and bathroom so the meeting would stay in my chosen frame: one room, two chairs, a witness. I moved the table 6 inches closer to the window for better light because light matters when you want things to be seen clearly. The public tracker showed the ship docking at 9:10 a.m. I wrote the time in thick letters on the whiteboard and circled it 3 times. The list of things that could go wrong grew like a shadow. Cancelled witness, delayed platform response, and aggressive phone call. Each item got a plan: Dana will step in, Karen will confirm freeze on call, Marcus will send a notice. If any of those things failed, I had to be ready to act in the moment. I practiced the meeting script quietly in my kitchen while icing my hip. I'd start with a calm statement of facts, slide the timeline across the table, and say, "Donors paid for my care, not your cruise." I'd hand over the demand letter, set the boundary sheet down, and ask for their signatures acknowledging receipt. I rehearsed standing to emphasize key sentences, practice that click of the cane as punctuation. My voice sounded small and steady when I tried it out loud. The recorder sat on the counter like a small, honest animal ready to testify for me if words began to bend. Everything felt higher stakes now. I had no more small, secret options. If they left on the cruise, I had to make sure the platform had enough to freeze the account. If they stayed, the meeting had to be clean and papered and witnessed. The last safe, soft things, backup rides, a neighbor's time, an easy timeline, were gone. All I had was the binder, the witness, my argument, and the clock. I felt oddly calm in the face of that. The body can hold two things at once: fear and the knowledge that you have to move. I loaded the final printouts into the binder and tucked my phone into airplane mode, save for the scheduled calls. Whatever came next would be in the light, not the dark, and I could live with that. I taped a tiny sticky note to my phone that read, "Call Karen at 9 o'clock," because my head buzzed with the same list of things over and over. The ship's estimated arrival was 9:10 a.m. That number lived on the whiteboard like a target. I wrote the exact sequence I'd follow if the platform placed the freeze: ask them to confirm in writing, then contact donors with the one-page plan. I practiced saying the sentences that mattered, and I practiced the cane click I would use when I stood to emphasize a demand. My voice needed to be steady, so I scheduled 3 5-minute breathing breaks into the calendar so I wouldn't speed up and sound like someone panicked. The clock clicked faster in the hours before the meeting. Karen called while I was icing my hip. She wanted to confirm details and asked Hannah a few simple questions about the unpaid sessions. I kept the phone on speaker and let Dana sit beside me and nod. Marcus sent a short note: "We are reviewing, we may contact the campaign owners." His message was blunt and practical, the kind of thing that robs excuses of their power. The platform's verification call, the state review, Hannah's confirmation, and a witness in my living room were the small, precise levers I'd built. The tick of the clock was less about pressure and more about a metronome. Do each thing in order, don't skip steps, and don't let feelings run the room. If the plan worked, the platform would freeze access and donors would be told. If it didn't, my last resort was to hand the demand letter to Mom and Dad with an attorney's signature and let the state office do the rest. Either way, the path forward needed to be clean. I felt the fear like a low hum, but I also felt a focus I hadn't had since before the crash. There was no room for improvisation, only the stage I built and the script I'd rehearsed. When I woke up on the day their ship was due, everything felt louder. The morning sun cut the living room into bright and dark lines. I moved 2 chairs exactly where I wanted them and put Dana in one. The binder sat open on the table with the timeline on top. The Ziploc with their keys was there like an offering and a trap. I set out 2 glasses of water and placed a certified letter I'd had delivered onto the placemat, opened but face down so they could see it when they sat. The little recording device was on a tripod aimed at the table. I turned it on and watched the red light blink steady like a heartbeat. I rehearsed once more, slow and exact: read the timeline, state the facts, slide the packet. Ask for signatures, offer water, end the meeting if they started shouting. I tested the recorder, then turned it to airplane mode with the recorder still on because I wanted the call lines clear. I checked my phone. Karen would call in 30 minutes to confirm the platform was ready to act if evidence checked out. Marcus was on standby. The ship's tracker showed the vessel 30 miles out. My hip clicked when I stood. The cane tapped the floor and sounded like punctuation. Everything was lined up. The stage felt cold and absolute, but the light spilling through the window made the binder look like a small altar of truth. Then the floor dropped in a way that felt both immediate and slow. Karen sent a short, careful email. We need additional internal approvals before a full freeze can be initiated. This may take time. The words looked small on the screen but felt huge in my chest. The platform could act, but bureaucracy moved on its own clock. Hannah texted, "I'm out of courtesy sessions. I can't keep doing this without payment confirmation." Her message had kindness in it, but it also had limits. The building's water was shut off early, the notice taped on the door like a white flag of inconvenience. I tried Ryan. His assistant told me he was in court and wouldn't be available for at least a few hours. The timing felt cruel. The official people who could move things were caught in other things, and my window for action was closing. The apartment hummed with the sounds of small failures, the refrigerator's motor, the creak of the radiator, the drip of the sink I'd filled to prepare for the shutoff. I sat and tried to breathe through the tightness in my chest. For a minute, I worried I'd staged a meeting they could change with a single sentence. I ran my finger over the spiral notebook page where I'd written the plan and the lines I needed to say. The words were still true, but truth didn't always come with a clock that favored you. When the core wound opened, it did so in a memory I hadn't expected. I was 9, counting the dollars I'd made babysitting and tucking them into an envelope so I could save for something small. Mom came in and saw the envelope and said, "We'll take this for now and pay you back on Friday." I remember folding my hands and believing her. Friday came and went. Over the years, that scene replayed in different forms. Canceled reimbursements, "we'll pay you back" promises that faded into excuses. I'd turned a blind eye to that habit because loving them felt easier than naming it. Now the habit lay exposed like a bruise. Dad's voice from years ago echoed, "We're a team, you don't nickel and dime family." That sentence had been a shield when I needed one, and now it felt like a trap. I'd softened hard truths for the sake of not rocking the boat, and the boat had quietly begun to take what it needed. I felt a hot, shameful surge. I'd let people who took from me keep doing it, even when it hurt. The shame faded slowly into something steadier. I replaced guilt with action. I circled facts over feelings in the spiral notebook and added paper over promises. Saying it out loud made it feel like a plan and not an indictment. A commenter online called me dramatic earlier that week, and for a sick moment I wanted to answer every insult. I resisted. Instead, I added one quiet note to the notebook: "I didn't cause this." The sentence isn't loud, but it held a truth I needed. The real pain wasn't only the unpaid therapy or the cruise. It was the years I'd spent making excuses that let them think they could take what belonged to me. That realization stung, but it also lit a clear path forward. If shame had kept me quiet, then paper and witnesses would give me back my voice. I took a breath, steadied the cane, and readied myself for what I'd promised: to move money into care and to make sure no one could spend it again without oversight. I set a kitchen timer for standing breaks so I don't hold my body too still. I test the recorder one more time and then tuck my phone into airplane mode with the recorder still on, because I don't want interruptions that matter, and I do want the proof that matters. I place 2 pens on the table, one for me and one for them. That small gesture is strangely calming. Decisions may be signed today, and I want the tools ready. I fill a water glass and set it in front of Dana and one in front of where I expect Dad to sit. The condensation makes soft rings on the wood like little maps of tension. I breathe and tell myself, as I've told myself all week, that even alone I'm not alone. The paper is loud. Then Marcus calls from the state office and his voice is steady. "We're reviewing your materials now. Keep your records handy." The line makes a window open where before there was only wall. My phone pings with a calendar reminder, platform verification call in 35 minutes. Dana texts from downstairs. I'm here. Relief walks into the apartment in sensible shoes and carries a notepad. She smells faintly of hospital coffee and sanitizer, and it makes the room feel like a place where care can be verified. I buzz her up. The fragile possibility is small, a platform call, a state office review, a witness in my living room, but it is real and it shifts the room's gravity. I rehearse my opening sentence again. Donors paid for my care, not your cruise. It sits in my mouth like a stone that feels solid and true. I put 2 fresh pens on the table because signatures might be needed, one for receipt, one for acknowledgement. I set the certified letter face down so they'll see the flap when they sit. I test the recorder's button and tuck the binder so it's easy to slide across. The little pile of documents looks tidy and deliberate. The timeline page sticks out like a flag. I sip water and taste metal in my mouth from too many nerves. The ship's tracker shows they're near, the calendar shows the platform will call. Little windows of chance align and it feels both terrifying and right. The hallway sounds different the moment I open the door to them. Mom has a faint smell of sunscreen and perfume. There's a tan line across her forehead like she'd been very happy in the sun. Dad looks like a man who's used to being listened to. They come in with that strange mixture of brightness and wariness, like performers who had been practicing their sorrow while packing suitcases. Dana stands up to greet them with a clear, expert nod. I offer water, they sit, and I feel the exact geometry of the room: 2 chairs, a witness, a canvas of papers. The recorder's red light blinks. My cane leans against my knee like punctuation. My phone buzzes with a message from Karen. Can we do a quick confirmation call now? The timing is almost cruel and almost perfect. Marcus emails. Proceeding with donor notice draft pending platform action. I read that sentence aloud to the room and the air changes. Mom says with a practiced softness, "This is ridiculous, we're handling it privately." The words hang like a prop. I slide the packet forward and let the paper make the first move. I read my prepared statement in a voice that is not loud but not unsure, and I keep my hands on the binder so they see the steadiness of it. The dates are short, the amounts precise, the promises listed in a single line each. I tell them what donors were told the funds would pay for, and I tell them what actually happened. Withdrawals that match a cruise confirmation and a therapist's unpaid invoice. I slide the demand letter across the wood and set the boundary sheet on top, the signature line waiting like a small test. I say the line I'd practiced until it felt like an anchor: donors paid for my care, not your cruise. The cane clicks once when I stand to emphasize that sentence, and the sound lands like a metronome, calm and exact. I state the outcomes I want the room to accept right now. The campaign will be frozen, donors will be notified with the truth, remaining funds will be routed to a monitored medical account in my name only, and misused funds will be repaid according to a written plan. I ask them to surrender keys and to remove my images from posts. I tell them to stop speaking for me in public. I ask for signatures acknowledging receipt of the demand letter and the boundaries. My voice is plain. These are not pleas but checkboxes on a form. Dana speaks briefly to confirm the clinical notes, that Hannah's sessions stopped because they weren't paid and that my discharge goals are at risk. Her words land like a stamp. Clinical need, recorded and clear. I flip my spiral notebook to the page labeled Today, the one where I've been checking off the pieces all week. The sound of paper turning is a small, satisfying proof. I check boxes as I read. Campaign screenshot, withdrawal notices, cruise confirmation, therapist invoice, demand letter, witness. Each box I mark makes the room quieter in its own right. The cane's click punctuates the beats of my speech like a metronome. 2 chairs contain the drama, no one paces, no one runs. We stay in the frame I chose. The phone buzzes again and I read out Karen's message confirming a temporary freeze while they review the materials. Mom's face drains of color like paint being washed off. Dana's notepad is crisp. She writes in a careful hand dates, times, the facts as she sees them. She looks up and says, "Patient's therapy interrupted by non-payment," and there's no softness in that sentence, just observation. It hits harder than an accusation. The water glasses leave faint rings around the certified letter and the keys bag. Those circles echo the circles I drew in the notebook, small rings of proof inside larger ones of evidence. The spiral notebook, the cane, the two chairs, they all do what I built them to do: keep time, hold the scene, and hold me. They start to speak, Dad bargaining in that old voice, Mom dropping to tears, but the paper keeps the room honest. I hand them the Ziploc with their keys and ask them to sign that they received the documents. Their hands shake as they write, they beg, they promise. I listen with the notebook open and the cane steady. Charity is not the same as access, I think, and then I say it out loud. Mercy is not the same as access. The sentence lands like the last piece in a jigsaw puzzle. The phones continue to buzz, they are an orchestra of consequences. The binder closes when I'm done, and for a moment the apartment feels like a room where truth lived and had been acknowledged. I hand them the Ziploc with their keys and the boundary sheet and ask them to sign that they received the documents. Their hands shake as they write. They kneel at one point, which feels embarrassing and small and frankly effective. Entitlement rarely looks like supplication. They beg, they promise. I listen with the spiral notebook open so I can mark each new line against the receipts I hold. Dana's voice is steady as she confirms the clinical impact of the unpaid sessions, and Karen's brief message pings on my phone. Temporary freeze confirmed pending review. Marcus emails, donor notice draft prepared. I hand them back their keys after they place them in the bag and sign again to acknowledge the documents. The signatures are shaky but there. I tell them plainly, this meeting ends now. You'll get a copy of everything and time to respond in writing. They look like people who'd expected a different ending, one where their charm fixed what they had taken. I don't offer them that ending. I pack the binder slowly and deliberately, each page a small victory. Outside, their shoes scuff the doormat as they leave. The door closes the way a door closes on something that can't be undone. I stand for a moment with my cane, feeling the click anchor me, and then I breathe. After the calls and the signed papers, the world resettles. The platform does what it promised. Money left in the donation pool is routed into a monitored medical account in my name only, with small alerts set up for movements so I can see every transaction. Karen emails confirmations, Marcus approves the donor notice, and Noel sends a brief message. The insurer closed the caregiver claim issue after seeing the records I provided. Hannah texts, "Bring your brace, let's work on that range," and I feel something like relief run through my body. Therapy resumes, and the aide I wanted shows up twice a week to handle laundry and groceries paid from the monitored account. Rent gets paid on time, and I sleep without hovering over my bank app. The changes are practical and small, and exactly the kind of steady things that heal a life. Hannah's smile is soft and real when I arrive for the first session after the freeze. She's glad and cautious and very good at keeping work and feeling separate. We work slowly, the small rotations, the breath timing, the weight shift. Each week the numbers in my spiral notebook get a new kind of mark: minutes walked unassisted, stairs climbed, pain scores that drop. Donors receive a calm, factual notice from the platform explaining the situation and where the remaining funds will be directed. Some write back with short, kind messages. A few ask for receipts, and I send them line items and invoices and photos of the therapy sessions. The public noise quiets into a thread of simple human responses: "Thank you, glad you're doing better, keep going." There is a cost, and I tally it because I like to know what I traded for what I won. Holidays change. Grace and I talk in shorter, safer sentences now, and we agree on one rule: no money talk, no campaign talk. We set those lines not because we don't have feelings, but because we know certain subjects make rooms dangerous again. I miss the easy idea of parents who were both charming and reliable. I miss the version of my family that told good stories. I grieve that, sometimes in the smallest places, passing a storefront we used to frequent, hearing a song from a road trip we never finished. Those griefs come as sharp little stabs and then they pass. There's also a daily toll, more appointments, more record-keeping, more boundaries to patrol. I answer messages from donors and insurance with calm, measured language that eats my afternoons. I sign papers with my right hand and the small arthritis twinge I didn't expect comes up sometimes where the crash hit me. I wrote in the spiral notebook a line that comforts me. This hurt is honest. It matters because it separates the physical from the emotional. My hip still complains when it rains. The ache is mine in a different way now, owned and treated and not a symptom of someone else's choices. Echoes of the old life remain because memory is stubborn. The apartment is the same in its bones, the same light from the window, the same space where I learned to put a binder down and mean business. But the scene is different when I replay the opening memory in my head, the confrontation with Dana and the two chairs. Back then, Mom and Dad were on their knees asking for mercy. Now the image that stays is me sitting with the binder closed, my cane leaning against the chair, breathing steady. The water glass on the table still leaves a ring, but the letter there is now a schedule for therapy sessions, paid in full. The spiral notebook that used to be full of pain scores now has pages with small victories. Stairs climbed, minutes walked, the first full night's sleep without waking from the hip's knife. I tape a small photo of me walking one foot in front of the other into the back of the notebook like a talisman. The Ziploc bag with Mom and Dad's keys is labeled history and lives in a drawer I open when I need to remind myself how far I've come. I don't gloat, there's no sport in someone else's collapse. The change felt necessary, not vindictive. The final pieces settle around simple, clean acts. I write a donor thank you note and keep the language plain. You paid for my independence. Thank you for trusting me to use it. I send it as a private message to donors who asked for updates and also post a brief, calm update on my own page for those who want the public version. Hannah sends me a flexed arm emoji after a hard session and I text back, thanks for being steady. The money that remains is used as promised therapy, the aides pay, a small homebound physical therapy device that helps me practice balance at home. I place the Ziploc bag of keys in a drawer and write history on the bag with a Sharpie. The word doesn't feel triumphalist. It feels like a map point. I close the drawer and carry on. I keep the binder not as a trophy but as a tool, and sometimes I flip through it to remind myself how clean facts are when you need them. I keep the spiral notebook beside the bed and add new wins in the morning. Up one flight of stairs, stand for 10 minutes without wobble. The cane is still nearby but used less, and the click it makes when I use it now measures progress more than protection. Before I close everything for good, there are a few soft, decisive acts I make sure to do. I send a private note to Hannah, you kept me moving even when the money didn't. She replies with a short, keep going. I post a short update for donors with receipts attached and a list of upcoming sessions and purchases funded by the account. I draft one more note in the spiral, help is not control, love is not access, accountability is not cruelty. I underline it twice. I lock the drawer where the keys live and set a small label on it where it says simply history. I pour water, watch the ring mark a circle on the wood and let it sit for a moment. The ring is a small proof that something stood there and mattered. It is quiet, ordinary, and endlessly comforting. I close the binder and tuck the spiral notebook under my pillow, a ritual that feels like a full stop and not an ending. The cane leans by the door, still useful, and I walk out slowly toward the park because there is headspace now for small pleasures that don't come with strings. If this story landed with you at all, if you felt the tiredness of carrying other people or the awkwardness of saying no to someone you love, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what you would do if you had my binder. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more true family revenge stories, and if you need strength for your own stand, watch the next video.